is going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Power Play, the Friday edition of the Power Play. Actually, we have a lot more things to talk about than what we would have if we were able to record on Monday, but that's cool. We have a lot of interesting things coming up. We have some injury updates that have been going on around the league as well as with the Penguins. But I know one thing that we definitely want to jump right into. It's been an issue, and it was kind of disappointing going on last week. The Penguins and Flyers home-and-home series disappointment.
Yeah, I was actually in California when I watched these games, so I woke up earlier to watch them since they were both afternoon games, and I was kind of thinking, like, why did I wake myself up to watch these? But starting with the Saturday game, they completely fell apart almost. It was not the same Penguins team that I had been watching all season. They were sloppy on defense, not as aggressive, and it kind of carried over a little bit into Sunday. Thank God they picked it up a little bit in the second period and in the third period in the game in Pittsburgh on Sunday. But overall, disappointing play by the Pens. It was not what I was hoping to see against the Flyers. And, when you look at the big picture, it also set us back in the standings a little bit because
3 points behind Boston now?
Yeah. Boston won their game over the weekend. And with us losing both games, that really took a hurt in the standings. I mean, 3 points isn't a whole lot, but 3 points is 3 points. And when you're this close to the playoffs, every single point matters.
Less than a month now. But the Flyers came off strong in the beginning for both games. Thankfully, Sunday, the Penguins tried to stop the bleeding there for a little bit, but Philly was perfect on 5-5 on the penalty kill. Saturday, Orpik got his second goal in the season. I believe that was on Sunday.
Yes, it was on Sunday.
And I think one of the biggest factors in this entire issue, this disappointment, was the fact that Crosby was scoreless in the home-and-home series against the Flyers.
Yeah, I think that just kind of goes into the overall. This was just not the same team on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, you look at they played a few days later and they completely turned it around. They played great, but I don't know what it is. Especially the game that they played in Pittsburgh. For some reason, we have a very difficult time of beating the Flyers on our home ice, which you would think would almost be the easier game to play because you've got your fans there backing you up. Philly's a tough city to play in no matter which team you are, especially if you're a rival. So I guess I can understand that the crowd probably factored into the loss on Saturday, but even to go absolutely scoreless on Saturday, I mean, Philly kept them to a shutout. So Saturday, not really sure what happened. Sunday's the bigger question for me.
In the regular season, the Flyers at Consol Energy Center, since its opening season in 2010-2011, are 8-1-1.
That's kind of amazing. I mean, when you look back, I mean, Consol has only been open a few years now. Very first game they ever played at Consol was against the Flyers, and we lost. And I mean, not like that has anything to do with the games this past weekend, but it still blows my mind every time Philadelphia comes into our building and knocks us off.
It's pretty amazing. I'm not going to lie. I really don't know how to explain it or even what to say about it. It just seems like every single time you see these two play in Consol Energy Center, the result is always the same. And for some reason, Pittsburgh's play always looks the same. It always doesn't look like the Penguins that we're used to seeing. They always look slow. They always look to be playing Philly's game of being rough and taking penalties, and it just never works out, ever.
They took some terrible penalties there that weekend.
That too, and kind of like what you said, Jake, that's exactly what I was going to point out, is that every time we play the Flyers, the reason why we don't look like the Pittsburgh Penguins is because we are not playing like the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're trying to play like the Philadelphia Flyers, and as many times as we have tried to do that, it has never worked out. We are not a primarily physical team. I mean, yeah, we can hit. We've got some big hitters. Orpik can lay out a hit. Tanner Glass can lay out a hit. Bortuzzo's a big, strong guy. But you can't rely on that physical game every single time you play them when you know it hasn't worked in the past.
That's definitely what it seems like every time the Flyers come to town or we head to Philly. It's the very physical aspect, and for me personally, I still think Crosby being scoreless, especially against the Flyers, against Giroux, who can put up big numbers when he has the opportunity, that was one of the biggest factors for me in this It was kind of devastating. I mean, 2 losses against the Flyers in Pittsburgh. That's almost sickening.
2 losses and Crosby going scoreless. When you put both of
That's
those together,
embarrassing.
that is a little embarrassing for the team. I mean, Crosby with being the face of the NHL, you almost expect him to do something, at least put some kind of point up on the board. But yeah, I guess at this point, all you can do is you learn from what you did wrong and what you did right. They did do a few things right, especially late in the game on Sunday. So you learn from those experiences and you move forward, because there is a chance that we could see Philly in the playoffs. I know they had a rough start to the season, and even though they started off pretty badly, actually, Claude Giroux did say that he guaranteed the team would make the playoffs, and the way it looks right now, I think they're living up to that. So we'll see what happens. But Pittsburgh's got to get their game together if that does happen.
And speaking of Pittsburgh getting their game together, a more recent issue, and by more recent I mean as last night, the game against the Red Wings and the disappointing loss in overtime. Katie, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
That was probably one of the most devastating, disappointing games I've watched. I mean, I know I said I was really upset, with the Flyers losses over the weekend, but just because, we didn't really come out too strong. And the one thing that I noticed, that I don't know if it really had that much of an effect, with Detroit scoring 0.4 seconds left in overtime, but Detroit scored first. And usually when the other team scores first against the Penguins, they have a tough time of coming back. When we get on the board first, it's a lot easier for them to maintain that lead and to finish out the game strong. But I really don't have words for it. I mean, until they played it back in slow motion, it almost looked like they had scored and the clock was out of time. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, there's no way they can count that. But when they slowed it down and you actually saw the count on the clock and the way the puck went in, that was... I think I just kind of stood there with my mouth open for a while because I couldn't believe that something like that had actually happened.
And an interesting aspect to that game last night, a pretty questionable cross-checking infraction by James Neal. I was scrolling through Twitter this morning. There has been no meeting set for that hit. Did you see that? What did you think about that? Did you think it was, as questionable as people are making it out to be?
Honestly, I think any kind of those hits are always going to be questionable, just because of, ever since Crosby had his concussion, everybody in the league has been a little bit more careful, and they want to be a little bit more vigilant on those kind of hits. But the only thing I can think that Neal would have going against him is that he's almost becoming a repeat offender. He's had questionable hits before. The first one that comes to mind this season was Boston, and he was suspended a little while for that. So I don't know.
Do you think people are making this out to be a little bit more big of a deal because of that?
I think it definitely plays into it. I mean, you look back a couple seasons, look at Matt Cook. Every time he laid a hit on somebody, even if it was an absolutely clean hit, there were always people out there, no matter how small the percentage, that claimed, oh, that was a dirty hit. But, when they look at the person laying the hit, it's because they've had dirty hits in the past. So, I don't know. Neal's building a reputation, and it's not a good one. So he's got to be careful.
Detroit has some big games coming up. One more against the Maple Leafs and the Blue Jackets. They're trying to fight their way at this point, which is interesting for the Red Wings. And the Penguins have a game coming up tomorrow against the Lightning, and which is interesting. Fleury, if he starts tomorrow, is 8-2 in his last 10 starts against Tampa Bay. The Penguins need 9 wins to clinch a playoff spot at this point, and 13 wins to clinch the Metropolitan Division overall. And another interesting statistic, Stamkos has a total of 16 points against the Penguins in their lifetime meetings, and Crosby has 19. And I don't think Stamkos' leg is giving him any trouble. I don't think that's going to be a factor for us when we play them, because he had a natty hattie in their game the other night.
Yeah, he really surprised me the way he came back after that injury. I mean, to be out for that long, not just because of the nature of the injury. Okay, a broken leg, that is very serious, and it did take a long time for him to rehab. But just because he missed so many games, and, when you have a broken leg, it's not like you can go out there and skate. It's not like you have, a sprained wrist or something. He couldn't even get on skates. But the way he came back as strong as he did, and, a hat trick, right after, or very soon after coming back, he's still a force to be reckoned with. And, almost the battle between him and Crosby every time they meet up is always an interesting one to watch. And they kind of go back and forth. Sometimes Stamkos has a few more points, sometimes Crosby has a few more points. But it should be an interesting matchup, especially now that St. Louis is not in Tampa anymore, and they have Callahan instead, like we talked a few weeks ago. So it should be an interesting matchup. I always like watching Tampa Bay play the Penguins.
I'm very excited personally. My first Penguin game that I ever was in attendance for was a game against the Lightning a couple years back, so obviously St. Louis was still there. And the thing I remember most from that game was Stamkos ate it on a penalty shot, and for my first game, the entire arena exploded. And it was just a crazy experience, so I always look forward to when Pittsburgh plays Tampa Bay. But we are going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we will be right back talking about current standings and what would happen if the NHL playoffs started today. We are Jake, Katie, and Daisy on WDSR, and we'll be right back.